Shutter speed versus shutter angle. What are they and when should you use it? That's what we're going to talk about today. And as always, hit that subscribe button. So shutter speed, let's go on this one first. So I have a camera here. It's an old film camera. It's a 120 millimeter film camera. And pretty much all this is film sits in this back half, pretty much in this black box is where the film will be. Film rolls, it comes across this bottom one is the actual capturing where the curtain is, and then rolls back up here. So it's going frame by frame. So I take a photo, then it pulls forward. Take another photo, then I move it forward, right? It is single action. It's not going to keep doing, it's not going to keep doing the 24 frames a second or anything like that. It's just singularly a photo camera. That's all. So shutter speed is in reference to the shutter within this device. How long is it open and how long does it take to open and close when you hit the shutter button, right? Makes sense. So the quicker that is, so say for instance, 1/250. Well, that's going to be very quick. Bang. Happens. Whereas if I did it at 1/1, for instance, so it's going to stay open for a full second. A lot slower. That's going to affect two things. One, it's going to affect how much light hits your film. And two, it's going to affect the blurriness or the sharpness of the shot. So if you're doing it at a faster shutter speed, say 1/500 or 1/1000, it's going to click and just freeze whatever's in the frame. So this is great if you're taking shots of your kids running around. It's great if you're using it for sporting events and need to freeze someone just before they kick a football or whatever, if they're mid-stride in a run, whatever it is, that's great. If you want to use a slower, that's great for longer exposures. So you're taking a picture late at night and you want to capture the night sky, where you want to use a longer exposure, allow that light to hit the sensor and give you a more visually stunning image. Whereas if you took it at a faster shutter speed, it's just going to click and then you're not going to, the sun or the stars and all of that stuff are just going to be like tiny little dots and they're not really going to show up very well. Now shutter angle. Shutter angle is from the old film camera video side, or cinema side of things, where the film is constantly spinning. You know, like these ones, you have to manually crank them. In a film camera, like actual, like that they used in Hollywood and all that other stuff, it would spin on its own, right? And you'd probably get about 5 minutes of recording time. So you'd have to time it out, figure out how many takes you could get or whatever it is before you have to switch the film roll and put in a new one. So what does that mean? So shutter angle refers to that. It's referring to the old video or cinema film cameras, and they used to spin through. And it refers to 360 being a circle, because that's what the reel was on, was in a circle or a cylinder or whatever you want to call it, was on a circular reel. And of course, circles are 360 degrees, hence why you see it in degrees. Now, the optimal shooting to the shooting ratio that you'd want, not ratio, but the angle that you'd want for that was 180. What that means is it gives you enough blur that it looks normal and looks human. It's not capturing everything super quick and everything super sharp. When we view things in our eyes, things tend to blur when we put them in front of our face. If you were to put your hand in front of your face and shake it, you're going to see some blur. Your eyes aren't going to see your hand crystal clear throughout the whole motion that it's doing. It's going to blur them together a little bit. So that's what that refers to, is it's staying open for 180 degrees of a 360 degree rotation, if that makes sense. So that means the higher the shutter angle, the more light is being exposed on that film. And the slower the shutter angle, the less light is being exposed on that film. So meaning the slower it is, the more it's going to freeze the image in front of you and just capture it super quickly, not allow a lot of motion blur. So it will be like kind of like more handycam footage where like everything's sharp and like kind of looks weirdly motion blurry, if that makes sense. And then the vice versa. So if you left it open for 360 degrees, or set your shutter angle to 360 degrees, it is going to be like capturing a lot of the motion. So you're going to get a lot more blur. This is great if you want to do like dreamy or like, what's the word? I nearly said artisanal. That is for food, not for film. But if you want to make a dreamy sequence or something where it's like a lot of slow motion or blurriness happening within the shot. So when do you use these? Well, when cameras like these started turning into digital cameras, like the ones that you got on your phone or pretty much any. Here, there's got one right here. Let me show you this one real quick. This is a Fujifilm X-H1. This is a digital camera. It looks similar to like my old film camera in the side over there. But when these started turning into digital cameras, they still use the same process, but now you could film on it. So it still used the old photo language rather than the filming language. And they left that for the cinema cameras. So like when you switch up to a red Raptor or a red Komodo or an Arri Alexa or Sony Venice or whatever, those use shutter angle because that's all they do. They only film video. This one right here will film video and will take photos, but it's primarily a photo camera first. So when should you use one versus the other? 9 out of 10 times, if you've got a mirrorless or a DSLR body like this, it's only going to give you the shutter speed. Well, then what do you do with that? How do you know what's the optimal shutter speed to get good video in, or that correct motion blur? It's looking too clean or it's too blurry or whatever. How do I get it to be like what I see in movies or what I see other YouTubers or whoever use? The easy rule of thumb for a DSLR camera or a mirrorless camera like this is to double your FPS, your frames per second. So if I'm filming in 24 frames a second, which is typically what everyone says cinema, films, all of that sort of stuff is filmed in, you want to double that frame rate for your shutter speed. So that would be 24 frames a second would equal 1/48. Some cameras don't allow that. Sometimes the closest you can get is 1/50. Shoot at 1/50. If you have the ability to shoot at 1/48, shoot at 1/48. But then the issue is when you change and start shooting at 60 frames a second or 120 frames a second, that's slow-mo. If you leave your camera in 1/60 or 1/48, well, now you've got the issue of like the shutter is going to be dragging. The motion is going to look like it's dragging and look like everything's being like smeared. So you have to then go back in, change your shutter speed to double whatever the frame rate is. And now you're filming at 120 frames a second. Okay, cool. Now I've got to I've got to change my shutter speed to 1/240. That is going to be the optimal thing. Whereas if you have a film camera, it doesn't really matter what I change my frames per second to. If I've set my shutter angle to 180 degrees, it is going to stay in that perfect middle spot that you want, where it's not. I don't have to touch it again. I don't even have to worry about looking at it. The only time I would look at changing my shutter angle is if there was like a light flickering in the background and I needed to offset my shutter angle so that the light didn't flicker in my scene. That's pretty much one of the only things. Or if you're trying to be, have that dreamy, like artistic shot, well, then I would speed up my shutter angle. So even I get confused. I would speed up my shutter angle so that things would drag a little bit more. So the primary rule is if you're shooting video, you only want to shoot video, your camera allows you, like I believe the FX line all does shutter angle now as well as shutter speed. You can choose which one. I believe a lot of the Fujifilms and Canon, they're starting to implement these things within the video side of things. If you're going to shoot video, just put it in shutter angle. It will save you a headache and just leave that shutter angle at 180 degrees, and no matter what frame rate you go to, it is going to be the perfect shutter speed, if that makes sense. But if you're taking photos, or if you're on a DSLR mirrorless camera and it doesn't do shutter angle, you're going to have to manually change your shutter every time. Every time you change your frames per second from 24 or from 30 to a slower 60 frames a second or 120 frames a second, you are going to have to double your shutter speed in comparison to whatever your FPS is. That is something that gets overlooked. It is so frustrating in post-production when you've got what you think is the great image. Most of the time you should be able to see it in the monitor because it doesn't look right and things look a little bit more blurry than they should be. But you're going to have to manually change the shutter speed by yourself. It will not do it for you. It will not remember. You're going to have to change it. So keep those things in mind. If you have any questions about why or how to do these things, or anything around DSLRs or film cameras and stuff like that, please leave me a comment. If I got anything wrong, leave me a comment. Let everyone know what's a good use case for how you've remembered this, or how you've been able to not make this problem or not make this mistake and save yourself the headache in post-production. But I hope that makes sense. I can do a deeper dive into any of these things that you want to learn about, whether it's film cameras, or whether it's DSLRs, or whether it's actual like old film cinema cameras, or it's, you know, the video cameras that I use every day on set, which are like the Red Raptors and the C500s and stuff like that. But if you like this video, please hit that like button. Of course, subscribe if you want to see more content like this. And as always, I will see you in the next one. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day. Bye.